Well, thank you so much, Adam, for welcoming us into your home.
Of course.
And making this meal for us.
My background is I'm Middle Eastern, and a very common Middle Eastern dish is called kofta kebab, which kofta itself means ground meat. Kebab obviously means meat on a skewer. And so basically what we're doing today is we're going to be mixing ground beef with ground lamb. And in here we have some chopped up onions and parsley. And then I will go through all the seasonings as well as to what makes this an authentic Middle Eastern dish. The kofta kebab typically is made with ground beef and then a little bit of ground lamb. So we're going to start off with that. I would say it's about 80% beef, 20% lamb. The lamb gives it that tenderness so that it doesn't dry out too much. Very common is allspice. It's a very common spice that is used in Middle Eastern cuisine in a lot of dishes actually. And then we have coriander, which is also commonly used. We use cumin a lot. In this specific dish, we also add a little bit of cinnamon. I know that sounds weird, but it just gives it that additional flavor. And then we also have something called sumac, which is native to the Middle East only. And basically it is a red berry that is dried up and then crushed. And it has kind of like a tangy flavor. So instead of like using lemon or lime, it has a little bit of tanginess, but it's not, I don't know, it's different than using lemon juice or something like that. And it's very commonly used as part of the cooking process, as well as being sprinkled on top at the very end after it's been cooked. There are actually a few other Middle Eastern dishes where you use either like lamb chunks or beef chunks with like vegetables and rice and stuff like that, and sometimes you do mix in some of the cinnamon. I mean, I could give you a list of various dishes, but it's very common, not just to one specific country. Multiple countries, we use spice because that's what gives it all the flavor. We don't just use, salt, pepper, or garlic. Like, we like to mix all these various spices because that's what just brings the food to life.
Oh, so you literally mix the lamb with the beef?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Gotta mix it in there.
Okay, so we're here. He's already got the ball ready. We got the ball rolling.
The ball.
The ball. Anyways, okay, so the meat is ready. So we're gonna get them on these bad boys. So let's do it.
So we start off with kind of like a meatball, and then what you do is typically you have the flat skewers, but I had these wood ones, and you just skewer it on there, and then you just start shaping it.
When you say shaping, what kind of shape?
So we kind of want to go for a flat shape. That's typically what a kofta kebab looks like, and obviously we can add more meat.
But probably the thinner the better because it expands.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But go ahead, dig in.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Here we go. So I'm gonna make a ball first, right?
Yeah. Make a ball first.
Okay. So what keeps you motivated to cook? I know we're all really busy and we're tired, but like what kind of motivates you to cook?
So, I mean, for the most part, honestly, with my job and how busy, life is, sometimes I don't get to cook as often as I like to.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, and, living, especially like having a roommate, I love cooking for people. And so there are times where like, I'll like, come home and start cooking, and she'll come home and I'm just like, yo, don't eat anything. I'm making food. You're gonna eat real good tonight.
Sounds nice.
Yeah, but it's definitely a cultural thing. In Middle Eastern cuisine, like we don't cook just for one day. We cook, and it's very much like Latin culture too. We cook in bulk, and it's because whether it's your kids or your extended family or a friend comes over, you want to feed them. And so that's how Middle Eastern cuisine is too, So, yeah, you could do something like this. There
smells
you
so
go.
good, by the way. I can smell like... No, I'm serious. You can smell like all the spices. It's delicious.
And then we'll just lay it on here.
Does mine look okay? Or...
Yours looks great. No, it looks great.
Right?
Seriously. Yeah. So my dad is a little bit of a badass, and when he prepares this, to make sure that the seasoning is good, he will take the raw mix and just like put it in his mouth to taste the flavor and then spit it out. I'm not gonna risk that.
Should I do it right now? Should I try it?
If you want to.
I'm just kidding.
I mean, you can if you want.
I kind of want to just...
Yeah.
No, I'm getting my crew member says no.
No, crew member says no.
Crew is telling me
We
no.
don't have life insurance on
Okay.
on the policy.
Okay, maybe next time. Maybe next time. But tell your dad he's a badass.
Yeah. I will.
That's pretty badass. He's never gotten sick.
No. So whether you know you want to do chicken, you can actually do like chunks of chicken. If you're vegetarian or vegan, you can also just do non-meat kebab skewers. So you know, like these vegetables right here, I cut them large just because I'm gonna lay them flat on the grill. But if you wanted to, you could just get any type of vegetable, mushrooms, broccoli, bell peppers, and just skewer those and put them on the grill too. Cool. You could do shrimp, you can do salmon, you could do all sorts of variations of it. I know some people even do like fruit.
I was just gonna say that. How do you... Okay, now we have an assembly line going on. I'm all about
She's a very efficient helper. Because knowing me, this would have taken a little longer.
So the first question, of course, is you are, of course, a very proud trans man.
Yes.
And I wanted to kind of talk through what helped you along that process in learning who you were and how to celebrate who you are.
Yeah, so obviously, since we're cooking Middle Eastern food, I did grow up in a Middle Eastern household. I also grew up in a Muslim household. And so growing up, you know, culturally and religiously, the whole LGBT community was a very taboo.
LGBT what?
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
I
what?
was like, what?
The whole LGBT community was you know, kind of taboo. You didn't really talk about it. And so, you know, I didn't really have the proper terminology for what I was feeling until I was much older. And at a young age, you know, I have an older sibling, and at the time, you know, it was very common to rip out magazine ads and, you know, models and put it on your wall because, you know, posters and all that kind of wasn't really like, you know, the thing.
There was no Instagram.
Yeah, there was no Instagram.
I'm gonna save that.
So, you know, they would post this up on their wall, and I would walk into the room and I'd be like, oh, okay. So I would see the male models and I'd be like, all right, I'm gonna look like that when I get older, you know, like masculine and like not necessarily like facial hair or anything, but just like the masculinity part of it, right? And so in my head, I thought, okay, when I get older, that's what I'm gonna look like. And then puberty hit at 13.
And
not so much. No, I was very, very distraught at what nature had brought onto my body. And so, you know, I went growing up very confused. As a kid, like in middle school, I would wake up every day, or I would go to bed every night thinking, maybe tomorrow I'll wake up as a boy.
Wow.
Just hoping, like, okay, if I pray hard enough, this is gonna happen.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the case. And so.
And I'm sure at the time, you know, when you're young like that, you think that your parents have all the answers and you could go to them with any question, but this just didn't.
No, you know, and I think you can understand from a cultural aspect, like, you're just terrified.
Yep.
You're terrified to talk about this because you maybe hear your parents make a comment about somebody else, or you hear your grandparents make a comment about something they saw on TV.
Not very inviting.
And you know, I won't lie, before I came out, my dad was actually kind of homophobic. He would make certain comments, like if he saw Ellen DeGeneres on TV, or you know, the Prop 8 thing when that first started happening, you know, like he would make comments. And not that he hated gay people, right? It was just an uncomfortable and unfamiliar topic because, I mean, his hairdresser, he's known him for years, and he's gay, and he's very comfortable with him. So I think it's just, that unknown and not knowing people or more people per se within that lifestyle.
And when it hits home, when it's in your home, that's also very different.
So, I went a very long time, obviously not coming out to my family, but also not really fully knowing what my true identity was. All I had known was gay and lesbian, and so I thought, okay, I'm attracted to women, so that must be I'm lesbian.
And that's what I meant. You.
I want to say I coined the term lesbian for my self-identity around senior year of high school, maybe junior year of high school. But it wasn't until college that I actually was exposed to other members within the LGBT community. But even then, I didn't meet my first trans person until I was about 22, 23. Right, and we were 17, 18, freshman year of college, and so I was still using the term I'm lesbian. But in the back of my mind, I always felt, okay, something's still missing. Because even I would go to the QSA meetings and stuff, and I would look at other lesbians, and I'm like, oh, I'm the dude in the relationship. And they would all look at me like I was insane.
Really?
Yeah, because if you go up to a lesbian couple and you're like, so which one's the dude? They're gonna want to punch you in the face because both of them are female.
Right.
So other lesbians were looking at me like,
hello,
what is wrong with you? Like, no, you're female, right? So even though I was still trying to navigate my own self-identity, I felt like I was also navigating to try to find a place within the LGBT community.
Right.
And I didn't feel very welcomed because whenever I would make comments like that, I would get these looks and I would get these comments, and I just felt very alienated from the rest of the community.
Did you know what the T meant at the time?
No, well, I mean, they briefly touched upon it because honestly, we didn't have any trans members at the QSA when we were going to school. So it wasn't until I was dating a girl at the time when I was 22, and one of her best friends started their transition. And they had previously gotten into a car accident, so they didn't have a ride to see their therapist, and they called me and they're like, hey, I need a ride to my therapy appointment. I can't miss this. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll take you. Sure,
what a coincidence.
So on the ride there, I was just like, do you mind if I ask, why are you going to therapy? And because they had said, oh, I'm going to the LGBT Center in Orange County. And so I asked, and they were like, yeah, so actually, I have what's called gender dysphoria, and I identify as a transgender male. And so in order to get my letter to stop hormones, I have to go to therapy. And I looked over at them and I was like, and I was like, this light bulb just went off in my head, and I was like, this is this real life? Are we in a Twilight Zone? What's happening, right? He's explaining it to me. I'm gonna use the male pronouns because obviously he's transitioned.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, you can do hormone therapy, and to fully match mind, body, soul, with what you feel comfortable with. And after I dropped him off, I went back to where I was living with my ex, and I was like, how come you didn't tell me this? I didn't realize. And she was like, well, yeah, this is a new thing, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, that was a very abusive relationship. And when I had expressed that I was feeling as though this might be what I identify with, she made me feel very dumb about it, kind of belittled my feelings and said, no, you're lesbian and you're a really pretty lesbian, blah, trying to force that.
And telling you what you are.
Exactly.
When you are like, no, I know who I am and not
exactly
open to that.
When I began dating my new girlfriend at the time, she was very supportive of it. She had only previously dated men prior, so from the very get-go, she treated me as a man. with even just like the small things of like the way she would lay her hand on my chest. Like if we were standing close to each other, it was very like, this is my boyfriend. You know what I mean? Even though I still looked female. So
how was that for you? How was that, even those little moments, how important was that for you?
It felt like milestones to me. Because then I started, because she made me feel comfortable that way, obviously I started dressing more comfortable with, you know, I was a little more androgynous. I wasn't necessarily more feminine. Even with my hair and how I carried myself, to a point where, because I was so androgynous, people half of the time thought I was a male. And so when I was at work or out and about, people were like, hey bro, hey son, like they would use these male pronouns even though I hadn't even started my transition.
And how you were fine with that,
and I
right?
was like, this sounds right. This sounds comfortable.
Yeah.
I put it off for a while still because of my family. And I was like, I don't know how they're gonna take this. You know, when I came out as lesbian, it was really hard on the family. You know, I ended up having to move out, and you know, I went from couch to couch for a while with my friends' houses.
Wow. This was in college?
Yeah, this was in college, my last 2 years, and so not because they kicked me out, but because it was such a foreign topic and unknown territory for them. They didn't know how to react, and it just became there's a lot of tension at home. And you know, as I said before, or I don't know if I said this before, but you know, being Muslim, even though I grew up in a Muslim family, my family's very liberal. Like,
oh really?
Yeah, very liberal.
Okay.
You know, the only woman that wears the headscarf, the hijab in my family is my grandma.
Okay.
Because she made the pilgrimage to Mecca.
Right.
But like my mom doesn't wear it. My sister doesn't wear it. You know, my cousins, none of them wear it. And you know, we enjoy an alcoholic beverage from time to time. And so my family, even though like as toddlers, my sister and I went to Islamic school. But as soon as we got old enough, my parents, like at the dinner table, they would always talk to us about other cultures, other religions. Like they would encourage us to seek that knowledge and to be accepting of the world and people around us. And so, it, you know, like, yeah, they were very much instilling of like, we're Muslim and we're proud of it, but they were also very much like, there's more to the world than just us, right?
Okay. So we're all done with the building of the skewers.
Yeah.
And we're going to go down and grill. But before we go down there, I know you've already been sharing with us about your journey as a trans man. And obviously family plays a big, important role in the LGBTQ community in terms of the willingness to come out, the willingness to be brave to do that. Because at the end of the day, you want your family to accept you, to be to support you. So I know that there were some barriers for you, but if you want to tell our viewers, like, what were some things that helped you and your family kind of overcome them? Because happily so, you guys have, you know, are on the good side now. Yeah. And all things are well.
Our relationship is much better now.
Yes. So
yeah. So I mean, after I came out as lesbian and I did leave home, we didn't speak for a few months, but eventually my parents called me and they're like, "Can we go to therapy? Because we don't understand." So I told them, I said, under one condition, like as long as it's a therapist that does understand our cultural background, but is also Americanized enough to understand where I'm coming from, but also where you guys are from. So we ended up going to family therapy. We did that for almost a year. And it did help with the communication process a bit. I didn't move back home because I just felt like the space was needed in order for me to process what I needed to process and for them to do the same.
Right.
But communication got better, and eventually, you know, when I figured out that actually I'm transgender, I made an appointment with the doctor, and I invited my parents to come with me, and I said, you know, that way you guys can ask whatever questions you have, and I don't want you to be in the dark, right? So we went, and my parents asked all the questions, the doctor answered everything, and at one point, because my mother is such an empath, you know, my sister and I, we're 10 years apart. So my mom had me in her mid-30s, which at the time was a lot riskier than it is now. And so, you know, she looked at the doctor and she just started crying. She's like, is it my fault? Is it because I had him at a very late age.
Wow.
Like, did I do something? And the doctor, explained to her, like, no, this is, there's no explanation for it, really. It's just, there's an anomaly when these individuals are born that their mind does not match physically with what their body, looks like. So after meeting with the doctor, my parents and I, we sat down, literally 10 minutes after, and they said, listening to him, doing the research, all this kind of stuff, and looking back at your childhood, we realized that you were struggling and that you weren't happy, and we don't want you to be unhappy anymore.
Wow.
And so, from there, little by little, I started hormone therapy, and it honestly has helped the dynamic of our relationship way more. We talk more, we laugh more, we spend more time together. It's not this awkward of I'm hiding who I am and being somebody that I'm not in front of them. Right. So it's a very open relationship now, and even with my sister and my aunts and my uncles and all of that. So it's definitely gotten way better. Yeah. Now, not to say that that's the case for every Middle Eastern or Muslim transgender individual. Unfortunately, there are countries that still will throw individuals into jail or kill them or whatever. So I am very privileged for being born in America and living in America, and for having such open-minded, educated family too, for them to be like, you know what, if this is what you are, this is what you are. You wouldn't just make this up, because who would want to go through this? Really? It's not an easy process.
Right.
So, I do acknowledge my privilege, because there are so many people in other countries that don't have it as lucky as I am.
I think you also being open, and that's part of the bravery, that you were also open to be like, hey, I don't want to leave you in the dark. So I think that also shows that that it was just as important to you that they knew who you were. Because a lot of people are afraid, and which they have a right to be. But I think that also helps in them knowing he's letting me in.
Mm-hmm.
Go put these on the grill.
Grilling these kufta kabobs that we made from scratch.
That's right.
That you so graciously helped me with.
I think I made that one right here.
Let that cook for a little bit.
Okay, so we are grilling. I don't know if you can see the smoke, but it smells incredible.
We got one that's kind of breaking apart.
That was probably mine. I think it was a little ball, and then that's okay. Just try to make it work. We also got the veggies going. He's waiting for I think the tomatoes are going to be last, huh?
Yeah, because those tend to cook a little faster.
Okay. Cool. I think something that was really helpful to my journey as a woman is seeing you when I met him when we were 18. We were kids. But
youngins.
But you were so and you didn't even know it, as we're actually finding out. Is from my perspective, I saw you at the time, and you were just so proud of being a lesbian and just owning it. And it was at a time when we were all trying to figure out who we were for the first time, really, when you were forced to. And that really helped me, because I saw you, and I'm like, okay, it really, honestly, it shook me in the way that I started to really have to answer questions for myself that I was scared to, but I knew it was if you're doing it, then I can do it, even just seeing you do it. So I don't know how you felt about your own journey as a trans man.
I mean, honestly, I feel like I was lost for most of it.
Yeah.
But luckily, thankfully to social media and Instagram, I turned to the Instagram community, and I got to meet a lot of other trans guys that had already started the process and kind of knew what they were doing and paved the way for me. And I was lucky enough that some of these guys I have actually got to meet in person. Whether they live here or in a different state, I've built such close friendships and such an important support system for each other that we're still friends to this day. And I'll be 6 years on testosterone this year. So it's been a long journey, but it's nice because they provided information for me that I necessarily didn't have, whether it was about hormone therapy or surgery. Even when we met, I was still very confused and very lost. You know, like I said, I just identified with a word, but it didn't fully explain who I was. And so, you know, even now, growing up, I still learn new things, like, you know, people that are genderqueer or gender neutral, or those that don't fit into a binary, you know, role. So there are things that even still I'm learning about, you know, and I think that's the important part of being within our community, is that we have to be understanding that there are various situations for different people. Everybody transitions different. Other people, you know, like, it's just, everybody's story is different. And you have to be understanding and accepting of that, and open-minded. Even though being trans, right, is a part of my identity, and it's a very important part of my family, my cultural background, my religious background, even though I consider myself a little more spiritual than Muslim, but to stick with my authenticity and what I knew was going to make me happy, I needed to have my family in my life, because they're a huge part of my happiness, and they're a huge part of why I'm still alive today and didn't commit suicide or, you know, harm myself, or, you know, and they bring that added extra, like, joy to my life, because being trans isn't the only part of me. You know what I mean? Just like being a lesbian isn't the only part of you. You have so many other parts of your life that make you you, right?
It's like you can't come out and not have your family there, and it's like, I'm all good, you know, like part of what brings you joy is it's your
being
family.
able to share this transition with them, being able to, you know, like, we now, like, our dynamic is so much better. We laugh, we joke around, we travel together, we're going on family vacations together. Before my transition, I dreaded going on a family vacation, because the entire time I was like, well, I'm gonna have to fake who I am. But now it's, you know, I'm my authentic self, and when we go travel, it's like, yeah, this is my son. You know, this is my brother. Like, you know what I mean? Like, even my uncles are like, this is my nephew. You know what I mean? Like, my cousins, you know, they're like, yeah, this is my boy cousin. You know, like, whatever.
How do you feel about that?
Oh, it's amazing. It's an amazing feeling. So here we have our final dish, a kofta kebab with some pita bread, roasted vegetables, and a fresh salad of Persian cucumbers and tomatoes. And at the end, we added a little bit of a lebna, which is kind of like a crema. And yeah, hope you enjoyed cooking with us today. And I wanted to thank Donuts y Tortas for joining me today and learning a little bit about my culture and my journey as a transgender man. Oh, and for those of you who don't really know what to do or how to support the transgender community, there's lots of information online, as well as information that you can get from the LGBT Center. And a few notes: if you ever do come across somebody that's trans, please ask them what their preferred pronoun is, and be sensitive to the fact that not everybody is necessarily as passing as you would assume they are. So even if you're not quite sure about questions to ask, just tread carefully and just be open-minded.